Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're tackling something that trips up, well, pretty much everyone when learning something new. How do you get good fast without feeling like you're just drowning in information?
Oh, yeah, hitting that wall. It's incredibly common, isn't it? The sheer amount you could learn just feels huge.
Totally overwhelming. So we've been digging into a couple of really fascinating studies on skill acquisition. And our mission today is basically to pull out the most practical, maybe even the surprising stuff to give you a real edge, a shortcut, if you like, to mastering new things more effectively.
Okay, let's get into it. One of the studies, it really flags this core mistake, something that pretty much guarantees failure when you're trying to learn. They actually call it theory overload.
Theory overload. Okay, that rings a bell immediately.
Right.
Like, buying 10 books on coding and signing up for 3 courses all at once.
Exactly that, yeah. And the study argues pretty convincingly, I think, that to really learn, to get past that overload, you need to engage in what they call experiential cycling.
Experiential cycling.
Yeah, think about, say, learning archery. You don't just read a bunch of books about bows and arrows, right?
Right, you have to actually, shoot the arrow.
Exactly. You take the shot, that's the experience. Then you observe. You see where the arrow actually landed, or what felt weird when you released it.
Okay, so you get the feedback, the result, then what? Think about it.
You think about why it went there. Based on what you saw, what needs to change. Was it your stance, your grip, how you breathed?
Okay.
And then, this is key, you experiment. You tweak one thing, maybe 2, and you try the shot again.
Experience, observe, think, experiment. Got it. That loop.
That's the cycle. And the study really hammers home that consistent improvement. It's basically impossible without that cycle. Just, firing arrows randomly without thinking or changing anything. That won't make you a better archer.
Makes sense. It's like learning anything, really. If you bomb a practice test, you don't just blindly take another one hoping for the best.
Yep.
You need that EOTE cycle to figure out, okay, what concepts did I actually miss, or how do I need to change my study strategy?
Precisely. It gives you the focused feedback you need to direct your efforts smartly instead of just, spinning your wheels.
So why does just piling on more info, that theory overload, stop this essential cycle from working properly?
Well, this gets us into something fundamental about how our brains work. Cognitive load. Just imagine your brain has, like, a limited workbench space for conscious thought at any one time.
A mental workbench. Finite space.
Exactly. And when you're learning something totally new, everything feels demanding. Every little piece of the skill needs your conscious attention. Back to archery, the grip, the stance, aiming, breathing, pulling the string. Each one takes up room on that workbench.
And I can see how that gets cluttered really, really fast.
It really does. And the research highlights this issue of trying to manage multiple new things at once. They call it multiple element interactivity.
Multiple element interactivity.
Yeah, basically you're trying to think about how several new ideas or actions connect and affect each other, all while trying to actually do the thing.
Okay, yeah.
And when the total demand, all these new elements you're juggling, exceeds the capacity of your mental workbench, that's cognitive overload.
So your brain just overflows. You literally don't have the bandwidth left to actually perform the skill and think about how to improve it.
That's it, exactly. The information gets blurry, you make more mistakes, and you lose that critical ability to engage with the observe and think parts of the learning cycle. It just hinders everything. Learning, habit forming, all of it.
Right.
And the studies point out that learning cognitive skills, things like mastering complex software or a new language, can be especially tough because just processing the information itself uses up a ton of that mental energy.
You're burning resources just trying to understand the concepts even before you try to apply them. So adding too many new ideas too fast is just, guaranteed overload.
Which brings us to this really counterintuitive finding from that first study, probably the biggest takeaway.
Okay.
The fastest way to actually master a skill is often to deliberately learn it more slowly.
Learn slower to learn faster. That sounds like a riddle. How does that work?
Oh, right. But they had this case study that really drives it home. They followed 2 students, Suresh and Enzo, learning the same material.
Okay.
Now, Suresh, he absolutely powered through it, covered 31% of the program in just 5 weeks. Enzo, though, he took 54 weeks, almost a whole year, to get through only 20% of the material.
Wow, okay, so just looking at volume, Suresh looks like he was crushing it.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? Expect him to be miles ahead. But here's the kicker. Enzo started at 62% understanding and finished at 92%. Huge improvement.
Nice. And Suresh?
Suresh started higher at 80% but he dropped to 71%. He actually got worse.
He went backwards. How is that even possible?
The study puts it squarely down to theory overload. By cramming all that material in 5 weeks, Charest was probably trying to juggle like 20 or 30 different techniques or concepts simultaneously.
Way too much for the mental workbench.
Exactly. His cognitive load was just constantly maxed out. There was no room for deep processing, for practice to sink in, or for those crucial habits to form that actually represent learning the skill.
Okay, so he filled the workbench, but couldn't actually use anything on it effectively.
That's a great way to put it. The information was sort of washing over him, but it wasn't translating into better performance. So the core secret they highlight is this. You have to balance introducing new theory with enough practice.
Right.
Theory without practice is just abstract stuff.
Right.
Too much theory, you get overload. Practice is what makes it real.
So how does practice create that balance? What's it doing?
Practice is where the magic happens in terms of efficiency. As you repeat and apply something, your brain starts building shortcuts. It goes from needing conscious effort, taking up loads of workbench space, to becoming more automatic.
So practice actually frees up cognitive space over time.
Precisely. And that freed up space is what lets you tackle the next piece of theory without overloading the system again. It's another kind of cycle, really, managing your cognitive resources. Now, the study does offer a rough guideline. They suggest maybe 5 hours of practice for every 1 hour of theory.
1 hour learning, 5 hours to... Okay, that's a concrete ratio to think about.
It is, but, and this is maybe the most critical point about managing this balance, they stress that this 1-to-5 ratio is just a starting point, a rule of thumb.
Okay, so what's the real signal then? How do you know you're ready for more theory?
It's not about the clock or how many pages you read. The real indicator is the speed at which the habits are forming for what you've already learned.
How do you gauge that? What does that feel like?
You feel it when the skill starts demanding less conscious thought, when it feels smoother, maybe faster, more efficient, without you having to actively concentrate so hard on every little step.
See?
But you're still maintaining accuracy, you know? When it starts feeling less effortful, that's your cue. That's your brain saying, okay, I found the shortcut for this part. I've got some workbench space free.
So if something still feels really clunky and awkward and slow, even if you've technically put in the 5 hours, you probably need more practice on that thing before you pile on something new.
Exactly right. Don't rush it just because the ratio says so. And this seems to be what Enzo understood, maybe instinctively. He wasn't focused on just checking off lessons.
Right.
He focused on really mastering each bit within his limits.
Mm-hmm.
He needed more practice, maybe closer to 15 or 20 hours for every hour of theory in his case, for things to feel integrated and automatic. So yeah, on paper, his progress through the curriculum looked slow.
But he was actually building real skill.
He was building real usable skill optimally because he didn't let himself get overloaded. He prioritized deep learning over surface coverage.
That makes a huge difference. Okay, so the first study gives us this core principle. Avoid overload, pace yourself based on habit formation, balance theory, and practice. But how do you actually, do that in practice?
Good question. And that's where the second study we looked at comes in really handy. It offers a fantastic, very practical roadmap, like a step-by-step guide that naturally helps you implement those principles and avoid overload.
Okay, a tangible framework. I like it. Let's walk through it. Step 1.
Step 1, define your goal and be really specific about it. The study mentions the SMART framework, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time-bound.
Standard stuff, yeah.
But they add this interesting technique. Write your goal as a positive affirmation. Use I statements, present tense.
Make it feel personal and immediate, not distant.
Right. So instead of just, I want to learn Spanish, it's more like, I'm speaking Spanish confidently in everyday situations within 6 months. And crucially, create an actual actionable plan based on that goal.
Know exactly where you're headed. Makes sense. Step 2.
Step 2 is huge for managing that cognitive load we talked about. Break down the skill. Any big, complex skill is really just a bundle of smaller sub-skills. Trying to learn public speaking all at once, that's overwhelming. Too many moving parts.
Right. Clutters up the mental workbench immediately.
Totally. So you break public speaking down, maybe into structuring a talk, managing nerves, using body language effectively, handling Q&A.
Got it.
Now you can focus your learning and practice on just 1 or 2 of those sub-skills at a time. That drastically cuts down the number of elements you're juggling mentally.
Directly tackling that overload problem. Okay. After breaking it down.
Step 3, choose your learning methods. And choose methods that fit the specific sub-skill you're working on. Reading a Japanese grammar book helps with writing structure right, but it won't make you a fluent speaker.
Need different tools for different jobs.
Exactly. For speaking, you need interaction, maybe conversation practice apps or a language partner. The study lists lots of options. Online courses, books, doing practice projects, finding a mentor, using apps, even AI tools.
We'll circle back to the AI. Okay, what's next?
Steps 4 and 6 are really closely linked. Set a realistic schedule and take frequent breaks. Consistency is king here. Small, regular efforts add up way more than occasional, exhausting marathon sessions.
Right.
Things like time blocking or habit stacking, linking your learning to something you already do, can really help build that consistency.
Build it into your routine. And the breaks part.
Super important. Non-negotiable, really. Breaks help reset your brain, fight off fatigue, let things consolidate a bit. They actually boost performance. The study mentions things like the Pomodoro technique or flow time.
Don't just grind until you drop. Rest is actually part of the work. Okay, step 5.
Step 5, practice. Now, this sounds obvious, but it's about how you practice. The study makes a distinction between rote learning, just basic repetition, and deliberate practice.
Deliberate practice. What's the difference?
Deliberate practice is more intentional. It involves not just rehearsal, but actively applying the skill, often pushing yourself just a little bit beyond your current comfort zone.
So not just repeating the same easy thing over and over, but trying it in slightly harder ways or different contexts?
Exactly. And crucially, deliberately practicing the parts you find hard, your weaknesses. If you're learning French, say, and you can read pretty well, but speaking terrifies you, well, your deliberate practice needs to focus on speaking exercises, not just reading more books.
Got to face the tough stuff. Okay, and the last step. Step 7.
Step 7, track your progress. And this isn't just about feeling good, though that helps motivation. Tracking is your systematic way of doing the observe part of that EOTE cycle we talked about earlier.
Okay. It closes the feedback loop.
Absolutely essential. Whether it's keeping a learning journal, saving before and after samples of your writing or coding, or just ticking off mini milestones, tracking shows you objectively what's working and what isn't.
Right.
It helps you see progress even when it feels like you're stuck day to day. They use an example like learning to write with your non-dominant hand. It might feel clumsy every single day.
Yeah.
But if you compare today's writing to a sample from 3 weeks ago, you'll probably see real improvement you wouldn't have noticed otherwise.
So tracking gives you that concrete evidence for the think part of the cycle. You see what's actually happening.
Precisely. It gives you objective data to work with. And just quickly circling back to AI, the second study does mention using things like chatbots as a kind of support tool, helping you define goals, break down skills, maybe even acting as a practice partner.
Interesting. Integrating tech into the process.
Yeah. So really, when you pull it all together, that first study gives us the fundamental why avoid cognitive overload, balance theory and practice, let habit formation guide your pace.
The core principle.
Right. And the second study gives us the practical how that structured step-by-step approach of defining, breaking down, choosing methods, scheduling, deliberate practice, and tracking. It's basically a system designed to keep you operating within your cognitive limits while making sure you have that crucial feedback loop for real learning.
So it's not really about cramming information faster at all. It's about being much more mindful, managing your mental energy, and structuring your efforts so that genuine lasting skill actually develops.
Exactly. Look, living anything worthwhile takes time and effort. There's no magic bullet. But by understanding these pitfalls, like theory overload, respecting how your brain actually works, and using a structured approach like the one outlined, you can make that effort far, far more effective and probably a lot less frustrating too.
Building skill effectively so it actually sticks.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's something to chew on as we wrap up. If this research suggests the fastest path to real mastery often involves learning more slowly by managing that cognitive load and really prioritizing practice, where might you right now be unconsciously falling into that theory overload trap in something you're trying to learn? And thinking about that specific situation, what's maybe just one small tweak, one little adjustment you could try this week to bring a bit more balance, a bit less passive understanding perhaps, and a bit more active doing.